George Santos, famous or infamous? I guess it depends on who you ask. An expelled member of Congress, a top earner on Cameo, and even a drag queen who raises money for charity. Is George Santos a villain, deeply misunderstood, or a little of both? Well, I'm about to ask it all because the George Santos joins me now. It's great to have you. Thank you for taking the time.
Tommy, thank you so much for having me. Big fan, so I couldn't say no to being on your show.
Well, I appreciate it. I've been following you for quite a while, and most recently I've been following you and your endeavors on Cameo. I mean, you have really made bank on Cameo, and I don't fault you for it. You got to get the bag while you can get the bag, right? But you've made, I saw like $600,000 on Cameo. What do you attribute that to?
So I want to set the record straight because most people usually it's like I didn't earn the whole $600,000, right? But it's like I booked $600,000 worth. As everybody knows, Cameo takes their lion's share. But that being said, I attribute it to just authenticity. Throughout everything that I experienced last year, the one thing I've always remained was authentic to myself and to people and all those human interactions I've had. So I thought when I went to Cameo, fans had an opportunity to interact with me in a very different light compared to everyone else on the platform. And I think that's where the big boom came from. And then especially not being afraid to lean into your demons, as you call it, and go put a $13 wig on from Amazon, a $13 bowl off from Amazon, and, do drag and raise money for charities that you actually like. So I think it's the ability to not run away from all the noise that mainstream media tries to tie you down to and use it as your Achilles heels. You use it as your strength. And I guess that's why it's been so successful.
So I'm going to give you credit for this because I think that now you are really an influencer. And I think that there's a lot of current sitting members that are still in Congress that want to be influencers on the left and on the right. I would say AOC definitely wants to be an influencer. I would say Marjorie Taylor Greene wants to be an influencer. I think several others that they kind of play more into being influencers than they do politicians. That was kind of forced upon you, but now it would seem that the influencer life is a life for you. What do you think is next? How can you capitalize on this, and how do you make sure that, I guess, the fame or the infamy isn't fleeting?
So, Tommy, it's funny because a lot of people say that, oh, your 15 minutes are fading. I'm like, I don't care. But it's like also not true because everything I do is still reported. I was actually just the other day in the Bronx covering President Trump's rally for the Gateway Pundit. However, in a historic reversal of roles, I was the one with the microphone and a camera in front of me interviewing people. And I got to interview people who have interviewed me for their podcast or whatever in the past. And it was just like this weird, wow, full circle. Here we are. I'm doing this. And that was one hell of a fun experience. So I pretty much opened myself to doing anything and everything, so long as I keep true to myself and to what my followers and my supporters expect from me.
What do they expect from you, I guess, is the best question here, because I think that you might be pretty misunderstood, but the controversy seems to follow you, and so do the headlines. As you mentioned, you do something, it's going to get a headline, which I guess is kind of powerful in and of itself. But what do you think people expect from you at this point?
Well, Tommy, I left Congress in an unceremonious way, but with a 96.6 conservative voting record. And I will continue to be that conservative voice. And I often say, yes, I'm gay, but I'm not blind. I'm gay, but I'm not deaf. I understand math. I know that being gay is not my entire personality, my entire persona. That's part of who I am. And it's the smallest part of who I am. I think the biggest part of who I am is an American, a concerned American, concerned about all the garbage going around in our country. Who better than me to go actually speak truth during this insanity that's about to start called Pride Month? I mean, we have one day to celebrate American patriotism on July 4th, but we got a whole month of pure vile promiscuity that's going to take place on June. And it's all going to be masked as, I don't know, what is it? Love and tolerance. Why not take this opportunity to show them that their so-called pride is absolutely vile and has a alternative agenda and motives that are anti-American. So I'm the perfect person because you can't call me a homophobe, although they've tried.
So you would never do your drag queen persona in front of children then, I would assume.
I wouldn't do it out of my apartment in front of the camera because remember, I'm not wearing anything other than a boa and a wig and pharmacy makeup. So I wouldn't leave the house like that.
Well, that's good to hear. And I do appreciate the level of authenticity that you have. You're like, hey, listen, this is me and this is who I am, and take me or leave me. But do you think that the rest of the Republican Party, as you know it, whether it's elected Republicans or just Republican voters, do you think that they are a little nervous about co-signing you or bringing you into the discussion again? Do you think they feel a little burned by you in some way?
Well, look, I'm going to say probably they feel burnt. The problem is that they're so sensitive to optics. But I will say this: I have plenty of friends that I still left in D.C. constantly call me, invite me to go to places. They're not burned by me. The ones that feel burned by me are the same ones that are now harboring Henry Cuellar and Senator Menendez. Those are the ones who feel burned by me. The ones that will not talk about Henry Cuellar and refuse to acknowledge that Senator Menendez is right now on trial and not being held accountable in the Senate.
So I want to kind of get into that because I know you'll give it to me straight. From your time in Congress, who would you pick out on the left and the right that you feel is the biggest fake, the biggest phony, the person that's different towards the public and the voters than they are behind closed doors? If you were to name one on either side, one or more on either side, who would those people be?
I mean, there's so many. You're like giving me the options, one on each side is so unfair. But I'll go this way, Tommy. Look at somebody like Mike Lawler on the Republican side. He stands for absolutely nothing, caves for everything, falls for every trap that Democrats set up for him. And he's unauthentic. He's disingenuous with the voters. He votes like a Democrat, but pretends to be a Republican. And then you have in that same thread guys like Jeff Van Drew, guys like Don Bacon. I mean, I can go on and on. Obviously, I'm not here trying to nuke the Republican majority and calling out all their rhinos, as people call them, the moderate Republicans in vulnerable districts, because I know that we need them. But we also need them to be more authentic. We don't need them to be there worried about their stock portfolio or, re-election. We need them to understand that they also need to take risks in advancing conservative agendas. And on the left, I'll say the same thing about people like Henry Cuellar or Mike Garcia out in California. Representative Mike Garcia is a freshman like I was, and his entire MO is simply very cozy to China. And I don't understand that. And that's kind of a facade. Now, he was the mayor of Long Beach, so one can argue there's a lot of relationships that he harbored during the time as the executive of one of the largest sports cities in the United States.
Mm. So I was thinking when this whole thing went down a week or a week and a half ago between Jasmine Crockett and Marjorie Taylor Greene, the little spat back and forth, bleach blonde with a bad built butch body, and then the ongoing about the eyelashes, and then obviously more came from that. AOC had to join in with her baby girl, and I mean it really did feel like maybe the Real World, maybe the Real Housewives, maybe Flavor of Love as I called it and got attacked for saying. But when you saw all that go down, what were your thoughts? Did you enjoy the drama, or do you think these people look like clowns?
I think they look like clowns, sadly. Margie's a good friend of mine. I think she had a bad miss on the eyelashes. I mean, look, most women wear eyelashes. You look gorgeous in eyelashes. You look like a mirage. Let's put it that way. And most women do it to look pretty and feel pretty. So we shouldn't be attacking each other on our physical appearances. However, the Jasmine clapback, as she calls it, that was unbecoming. That was like juvenile. And then AOC with the baby girl trying to pretend she's from the Bronx. And then there was Anna Luna Paulina trying to chime in and saying, calm down. Look, guys, that's not what Congress is about. That's not what the American people expect from Congress. And the worst part is, I bet you most Americans don't even know what that hearing was about. They were gathered there to decide whether or not to hold the Attorney General of the United States in contempt of Congress. But nobody spoke about that. Merrick Garland his faith in being held in contempt of Congress was being debated, and nobody seems to know that.
So you're somebody who has said in the past that you don't like being famous. I would argue that you lean into it a little bit, and I don't fault you for it. I don't fault you for leaning into it and, using the influence that you have, to bolster yourself. I think that's something that we all do from time to time. It bothers me when members of Congress do it, sitting members of Congress do it. But do you think on the Republican side, I know that you said you're friends with Marjorie Taylor Greene and others, but do you think that some of these folks, do you think that they would prefer to be famous, or do you think that they're performative because they want a headline, they want to be famous? Some names I would throw out in addition to Marjorie Taylor Greene, maybe a Lauren Boebert. She's been going through a difficult time, but she's had, in the past, she's had some things that have gone viral. There are others, I think some would argue Matt Gaetz maybe even a little bit tries to bring the attention to himself for self-indulgent purposes beyond just standing for the country. Do you think the Republican Party has an issue with trying to be quasi or semi-famous?
They're all fame whores, Lauren. They all want to be famous. They all want to spin, Tommy. They all want to think of what's next because they know elections aren't guaranteed. So there is a sense of that necessity to, I'm going to be bombastic. I mean, look at Ken Buck. Ken Buck was bombastic for no reason. And now we're all just waiting for the day that the CNN contract announcement drops, or MSNBC or whatever. This is what all these folks do. They want that fame. They want it because they know it's the only thing that they'll have in a life post-Congress. I never wanted to go there and be famous. I wanted to actually go do legislation. I'm kind of boring. I mean, I'm funny, obviously, as a person, but like when it comes to legislation, I'm kind of boring. Like, I just wanted to do this stuff. And then they threw it at me and they said, oh, we're going to make you infamous. I'm like, all right, so I'm going to lean in. You're going to stalk me outside my office. Here's some Chick-fil-A sandwiches. And you know what's the best part? They freaking ate it. I bought them donuts. They ate it. I bought them cupcakes. They ate it. So it's like the press wanted to troll me, but they weren't ready for a sassy millennial gay guy to go to Congress.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I mean, you're quick on your feet, that's for sure. I think a lot of these people that are serving us in Congress, I think that they want to be Donald Trump. And I think that they see the success that he's had, but they're not Donald Trump. They're never going to be Donald Trump. They're never going to be famous like Donald Trump because he's not famous for being a politician. Quite the opposite. He's famous for everything that he did before he was a politician. So I think a lot of these people, they see Donald Trump and they want to be him so badly. And then I think a lot of them, and I think there's a lot of genuine ones who really support Trump and they want to be around Trump. But I'm wondering if you get the sense that some of these people, whether they're in the conservative sphere as maybe influencers or commentators or actually serving or running for something, do you think that they all hustle their little booties down to Mar-a-Lago and kiss the ring because they're desperate for, I guess, Trump's golden touch or whatever it might be? Do you think that there's a little bit of hero worship there that's a bit too much, not on Trump's part, but on these people that kind of surround him like vultures?
Hey, look, I'm a big fan of Trump. I've been to Mar-a-Lago countless times over the past few years, and not necessarily going there to kiss the ring. I mean, I like the guy. I don't need to kiss the ring. I think I've already shown that in action since 2015. But you see a lot of people who toe this really weird line in the public sphere, but they will run down there. And sometimes I wonder how they breathe from their heads, where, because it's really hard to watch. I've witnessed members who will go on the House floor or into reporters. They'll slam President Trump and then go to Mar-a-Lago and kiss the ring and say, oh, President Trump, I need you to not endorse my opponent. And when President Trump says that people come to him with tears in their eyes, that is very true. It is very true. Politicians go in there crying to beg him for some sort of leniency, mercy in their tough primaries. I'll give you an example. In South Carolina, you have Nancy Mace. She went bombastic on Trump for a while. And then when she saw McCarthy was coming for her in a primary, all of a sudden it's like, oh, President Trump's the best ever, MAGA, MAGA. I'm like, you used to say MAGAs were the R word, right? And now you're all of a sudden going MAGA? Like, it's like there's no consistency. Nobody can blame me for anything other than being straight through MAGA, right? Like I've never waffled or teetered with that issue. Now, most of these people, they go from MAGA to cold, to moderate lib, to no, MAGAs are crazies. They're all, insane. So there's a lot of truth to that. But what people forget is one thing. There's no other Donald Trump. You just can't
Right.
capture that essence. You can't replicate it. That is Donald Trump. And he, as you said, he's famous for all his accomplishments, not for being a run of the mill politician.
Right. And he's got, a personality that people gravitate towards. So I want to ask you about that. A couple things. I want to know who you think that his VP choice should be. And then to kind of dovetail along with that, I want to get your take on somebody else who's become controversial in the last month, and that's South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. So let's start with Kristi Noem. I want to get your unfiltered take on her, and then let's hear who you want as the running mate.
I love Christy, full disclosure, but I would never take a dog to the gravel pit and then write about it. I mean, that was just. I love her. She has so many accomplishments, but I feel like the rest of her career, the rest of her life is going to be shadowed by
With
that
all
one
due
story.
respect, though, what are her accomplishments? Because I'm from South Dakota, born and raised. I was an intern for her in 2010. I know her record well. What would you name as Kristi Noem's accomplishment?
I think her accomplishments throughout the pandemic, at least as governor, right? I don't know her accomplishments in the House, so it would be tough for me to even debate that because she served way before I served.
But even as a governor, you just think the way that she handled COVID?
I think she handled COVID well because South Dakota fared well economically speaking. She wasn't very prone to draconian rules. I do understand she has some shortcomings, like the biological males in girls sports. She vetoed that ban for some odd reason, unexplicable to me and to many Americans. But I think that the entirety of her record now is going to be defined by the woman who took a dog in a gravel pit and shot it just because it took out some chickens.
Yeah. I would also argue, just as somebody who's from South Dakota, there would have never been a Republican governor of South Dakota that would have shut that state down. So it bothers me when people say, well, she left South Dakota open. A Democrat probably would have left South Dakota open. So for people like, oh my gosh, Kristi was so noble in that. It's like,
well,
no, not really.
There's less people in South Dakota than there is in Queens. So I think you're right. Like, there's no need to shut down South Dakota. I think you social distance naturally out there.
Exactly. So I think that, you give credit where credit's due, but I haven't really seen anything legislatively on Kristi Noem's plus column that any other Republican in South Dakota wouldn't have done. So that's my take on her. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of people who kill animals, who kill dogs, who kill pets because they're too playful and because they take out a couple chickens. I mean, to me, that's just dead on arrival with her, but I've never liked her, so there's that. But who do you think the running mate should be, and who do you think he's going to choose come convention time?
Well, we know not Kristi Noem.
I hope.
That's the safe. And at one point, I did think she was going to be the running mate. Look, I don't think it's going to be any of the names that people are flaunting around. I love Ben Carson. Kudos to him. But on a presidential ticket, I think he does very little for President Trump. I'm going to throw a wild card out there of somebody I guess is my wish list pick. Would be Governor Huckabee Sanders, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who served as his press secretary.
Well, that's been discussed. That's been discussed. In fact, there was a leak. Somebody said that he was going to pick a governor from a southern state.
Which is great. I mean, there's so many leaks, right, every day. But I think Sarah Sanders would be not only the smart choice, but the sane choice. She's good on her feet. She served them well as press secretary. As governor of Arkansas, she started protecting American land from foreign nations, specifically China, which is an enormous geopolitical opponent of ours. So she's taken in a very short amount of time some really strong stances locally in in Arkansas that I think would make her an asset. Plus, she's a mom. She's a woman. And I think that would kind of ameliorate a lot of the skepticism that people have with Trump on women. And I think, Sarah, I'm not doing identity politics here, but I'm saying some people need to soften the Trump blow because of the big personality. I think Sarah Huckabee Sanders would be a very smart choice. Somebody who is very civil servant oriented and not so much, flashes, poses, red carpet cameras, skimpy little dresses. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I like her. She doesn't excite me, but maybe our barometer for what politicians are supposed to do is too high because of Donald Trump. We expect to be excited. I love, the options of a DeSantis or a Rubio, but then you've got the Florida issue at hand. Same thing with Byron Donalds. You've got the Florida issue that would need to be navigated. So that obviously
send Byron back to Brooklyn.
Yeah, it certainly poses an issue, but I love all of those names. I think that whoever he chooses needs to be somebody that's ready to lead, that's ready to be America first, that's unwavering in that. I never liked the Mike Pence choice. I thought that that was to placate people that were nervous about Trump, but I never found him exciting. I never found him somebody that moved the needle at all. And that's not just having to do with everything that went down at the end, but just really through all of it. I was never really a fan of Mike Pence. He seemed like an okay guy, but just didn't really excite me. I don't know. I think that he needs somebody that's going to make at least some sort of an impact. So I think that's the direction it has to go. But the last question I do have for you is when it comes to the future of the party, when it comes to 2028, Donald Trump wins in November, there's got to be somebody ready to go 4 years later on the Republican side. Who would you like to see that person be?
I really want to rehab Governor DeSantis and hope that we can make sure that he gets, look, primaries are so vicious. And I saw a lot of people and friendships torn apart this past primary season, unnecessarily, in my opinion. But I really do still think that we rehab the image of Ron DeSantis with all those Trump voters.
George, do you think you're the person to help rehab his image?
I don't think so.
That's very transparent of you. That's very self-aware of you.
Yeah, no, I think I'm very aware of my kryptonite, and it's just me. But I do think Governor DeSantis should be lined up, and I think him and Trump are already working on that. And with him coming in and talking to Trump, and look, if not him, who? That's right. What I keep telling everybody who says never DeSantis. It's like I'm gonna get heat for this, but I like Nikki Haley too. She's a great public servant, but again, I understand she's problematic with the comfortableness that she has with all the big lobbyists, and she said some things that were unbecoming of her. So I think her career as seeking high national office is over because of her own doing.
Yeah, I dislike Nikki Haley almost as much as I dislike Kristi Noem. So there's that.
You're tough to please, damn.
Well, Nikki Haley, I mean, there's not a lot of people on the MAGA side that really like Nikki Haley. And I'm not just talking because she ran against Donald Trump. I don't care about that. I love Governor Ron DeSantis. I don't care that he ran against Trump. I hope that he is the future of the party. Nikki Haley bothers me because I think that she is a part of the military-industrial complex. She loves endless wars. And I think that she's a neocon rhino. So that's why, I mean, if you couldn't tell, I'm pretty honest and forthright about my feelings about things. She might be fine personally, but I just don't like her, in terms of being
We should have Congresswoman Tomi Lahren then. We need more people like you one day.
It doesn't spark my fancy to ever be in political life. Never say never, but it just doesn't do it for me. I really appreciate your time, though, and I appreciate you for being just who you are. And I think that in and of itself is a superpower. So I appreciate you being, willing to, poke fun at yourself, which I think is also important. And best of luck there on Cameo. I hope that you keep making bank, whether as yourself or as a drag queen. And God bless you.
Thank you so much. God bless you, Tomi. You're the best. Bye.
I appreciate it. All right, folks, that does it for this special episode of Tomi Lahren is Fearless. Please be sure to go visit the new Tomi Lahren is Fearless YouTube channel and like and subscribe for full episodes, including this one. I will see you right back here live Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Until then, from Nashville, God bless and take care. What's up, guys? Thank you for watching Tomi Lahren is Fearless. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you'll never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.